The disguise operation is cancelled. Crush the fools bothering Sir Rimuru's mind until nothing remains of them.
With that one order, there was nothing left to bind our forces. The Empire thought they had the upper hand with their magi-tanks and airships.
The training time is over! Now it is time to turn these skies into a graveyard! All troops, enter Dragon Body!
Fail to kill the enemy and you're the one who dies. Those are the ironclad rules of the battlefield.
The waiting was over. It was time to unleash our true power and show the Empire a walking nightmare. If this counterattack has you locked in, hit like. Tell me in the comments which Tempest front you would trust most, and subscribe for the next episode. Patreon members get early access and help cover the AI narration, subtitles, thumbnails, and renders that keep this project moving. Now, back to Gobta, Gabiru, and Hakuro turning the battlefield around. All the monsters on the battlefield accepted the words of their lord and ally Rimuru with their souls. They were the words of an absolute ruler, and he accepted every bit of their loyalty and trust. Then another voice commanded them.
The disguise operation is cancelled. Crush the fools bothering Sir Rimuru's mind until nothing remains of them.
With that, there was nothing left to bind the monsters. Joy filled their hearts, and they gave in to pure impulse, unleashing their magic force. The demonic auras they had suppressed so they would not affect the town they lived in were now fully released, and the concentration of magicules around them shot upward. There was nothing to be afraid of anymore. Their deepest impulses could finally drive them across the battlefield. Gobta heard the order too, even as shells kept raining down around him. Gobta said, "Finally! But it doesn't look like we've achieved our goals yet. Is that okay?" He was talking to himself, but his second-in-command, Gobchi, responded, "Well, what's the problem? The plan was to persevere and make the opponent show off all their latent force. But at this rate, we're going to dwindle down to nothing. We have to scare them a little, or nobody strong's going to come out for us." Gobta asked, "That's how it is?" Gobchi answered, "That's how it is." Gobta and Gobchi were having this conversation in the middle of a battlefield, bombarded by shells and shockwaves. Anyone watching would have been impressed that they could even hear each other, although the Goblin Riders were well used to their supremely relaxed attitudes by now. Gobta added, "If it were us, the strongest guys would jump out first, but..." As they conversed, Gobta, Gobchi, and the Goblin Riders under them were seething more than ever before. Everyone was waiting for the order from Gobta to come down. Shells rained down at regular intervals, deliberately and precisely, as if the Empire were throwing a dozen darts at the same dartboard at once. From the beginning, the goal was not a direct hit. The goal was to wipe them out with the shockwaves. The Goblin Riders understood that much, so they kept moving in search of shelter. A direct hit would kill them instantly, but anything less than that was survivable. Everyone there was powerful enough to rank as a lieutenant in the Tempest force, the equivalent of an A- threat. Even a serious injury could be handled with a little potion. That was why Benimaru had ordered them to feign defeat. There was no need to actually lose, they only had to pretend they were in crisis. While they did that, the remaining troops would block the Imperial army's retreat and counterattack all at once. If they waited until the tanks ran low on ammunition, the strongest people on the Empire side would come finish the job. Benimaru had explained it in the simplest terms possible. Gobta had wanted to complain about that plan, of course. But an order was an order. In his mind, the Imperial army was nowhere near as frightening as Benimaru. Gobta remembered thinking that Benimaru was usually a real nice guy. But when military matters were involved, he became merciless. This time, Rimuru's safety was at stake. There was no way someone like Gobta could speak out against that. Convincing the Goblin Riders to follow the plan had been a pain. But once Gobta mentioned Rimuru's name, they stopped complaining. All that remained was to overwhelm the enemy in the first engagement. That, as expected, had been asking too much. As soon as their attempted breaththrough was blocked, Gobta's force decided to stick to the original decoy role. But that was over now. Rimuru had spoken, and Benimaru had followed with new orders. There was no need to hold back. The time had come for them to unleash all the power they possessed. Overthought communication, Gobta told his squad mates, "Okay, you now have permission to attack freely. The green numbers are Hakuro's responsibility, so they're good. But for now, I'm leaving you riders to Gobchi. His face stiffened as he sent the message. His tone was the same as always, but there was unmistakable power in it. Gobchi asked over the link. Roger that. So what are you doing, General Gobta? Gobta answered with a troubled-looking smile. Well, I can't play around anymore either, you know? I don't care about that Big Four stuff, but it's an order from Sir Rimuru, and I can't act like a wimp when he's watching me. I'm gonna get real serious now. Gobchi and the rest of the team looked into Gobta's eyes. Immediately, they knew he was serious, the kind of seriousness they almost never saw in their boss. Gobto tried to sound cool. I know what you're capable of. Go ahead, don't hesitate to use it. Gobta shot back over thought communication. Why are you acting so bossy? Gobto stammered. You heard that? Gobta said. Well, it's fine and all, Gobto, but you do your best too, okay? Gobto answered. Of course. Gobta gave a tired sigh. Gobto had been on the team since its early days, so they had known each other for a while. He was good in his own way, but thanks to absorbing a lot of unnecessary knowledge from Rimuru, he had a tendency to act cool when it was not called for. Way back when, he had imitated Gobta's aide Gobchi, but now he had evolved in his own unique direction. He wore a long black coat with 2 longswords he did not even know how to use fully. Gobta wondered if he was safe out here, but with Gobchi around, it would probably work out. After making up his mind about that, Gobta turned to the person he had to worry about the most, Testarossa, still sitting behind him. Gobta asked her over thought communication, so along those lines, Testarossa, I'd like us to go our separate ways from here if that's okay? Testarossa nodded, smiling. Even amid the flames and concussive impacts, her graceful gestures remained intact, and her military uniform was still clean. Soot and dust would never stain Testarossa. She replied, yes, of course. I feel the same way as you. From now, I will act not as an observer, but as an individual living under Sir Rimuru. Please do your best, all of you. So Testarossa got off Ranga, and with a final good day to you, she breezily walked away. Rimuru had attached her to Gobta as an observer, but that role was now over. The lethally dangerous demon was on the move. Gobta thought she really was a free spirit, but he did not say it out loud. He had grown up enough to know that saying it was a bad idea. After seeing Testarossa off, he decided it was his turn. Gobta gave the order. All right, everyone, begin. The goblin riders roared back, yay! Even Gobta wanted Rimuru to see how cool he was. He liked Rimuru. Rimuru was selfish and more than a little mean, but at the same time, he was always so kind and worth relying on. Gobta admired him. Gobta had once been just a tiny little goblin, but he had grown into a fairly famed warrior. Now it was time for him to repay that favor. Gobta called to Gobchi. The riders are yours, Gobchi. Then he turned toward Ranga. Gobta shouted, now it's your turn, Ranga. Transform. Ranga, who had been lying in wait all this time, answered with pride. I've been waiting for this moment, Gobta. Let us show our powers to Sir Rimuru, my master. The two fighters' consciousnesses synced together as they released their inner magic power. The next moment, black mist enveloped Gobta. Gobta cried, come on, let's go wild. Ranga answered, yes, I've been holding back for so long. The mist disappeared as if it had been sucked into Gobta. It revealed a goblin fighter infused with a black wolf, a humanoid wolf with 2 ominous horns. Gobta and Ranga had unified, and only now could they be called part of the Big Four without a trace of irony. The moment Gobchi and the rest of the goblin riders saw him, they rushed out from hiding. Gobchi shouted, don't get in Captain Gobta's way, he's fighting serious now. That desperate shout showed just how much danger the goblins were in. The demon wolf's fists were literally swatting tank shells out of the air. Even a direct hit did not singe his reinforced black fur. These massive projectiles, flying just under 6 times the speed of sound and carrying incredible destructive energy, could not even dent Gobta now that Ranga's armor was on him. That protection was a byproduct of Ranga's own multi-layer barrier. To the unwitting Imperial troops, he was nothing but a walking nightmare. One private stammered, what is that? Am I dreaming, or? Another soldier answered, you sure aren't. It's a monster. I can't believe the kinds of freaks that Demon Lord has working for him. Panic was beginning to set in among the lower-ranked privates. Among the troops inside the tanks, all stuck together and unable to move, the fear was even greater. With a howl from Gobta, dark lightning stormed down from the sky above the tank crews. 1,000 tanks had transformed into a fortress, and now they were right targets. The dark strikes interfered with the tank's defensive barriers, emitting blinding light as they hit. The barriers held for a few moments, but their resistance to electricity was less than perfect. The crews inside the tanks seemed safe from the shock itself, but the infantry nearby, standing in formation with the tank wall behind them, suffered incalculable damage. Dark lightning was dangerous for more than the shock it carried. Its essence was even more terrifying than natural lightning. Inside a tank, one crewman cried, "Ah, hot! This has to be seriously damaging the tank's defensive mechanism." Another voice screamed, All teams, evacuate! Evacuate your tanks at once!" Although the crews were saved from electrocution, the heat generated by the bolts was too much for the tanks to bear. Even after the first cracks appeared, the dark lightning was not done. Like a living, thinking snake, it continued biting into the inorganic metal plating, causing serious damage to the mechanical parts inside. One tank after another exploded in flames. With thunderous rumbles, they breathed their last. In this situation, the tanks linked together into a fortress had become death traps. The crews desperately abandoned them, scattering to avoid the lightning. Military command was gone for them now. They felt and acted every bit like a defeated army. Gobta smiled as he watched the scene. They were no big deal after all. The power he and his cohort wielded was more than enough to face this foe. And the enemy's main force, the original target of this operation, no longer seemed threatening while he wore this demon wolf form. He looked at the wall of tanks towering in front of him. It had once blocked their way, but now it was belching black smoke from Ranga's lightning. Without hesitation, Gobta let out a roar, a voice cannon. Instantly, it shattered the wall. On the other side, he could see a line of tanks pointing their muzzles at him. Gobta said, "More than enough to play with, huh? This is where we come in." Ranga answered, "That's right. I'm sure Sir Rimuru will love watching this." Gobta and Ranga gave each other contented nods. Then they began. Without further hesitation, Gobta dived through the burned-out wall of tanks, wholly unafraid of the vast forces awaiting him. Then he ran across the battlefield with all his might. He exceeded the speed of sound, making it impossible for the Imperials to follow him with the naked eye. Gobta shouted, "Just you see what Ranga and I have been working on in training. How long can you keep up with us, huh? Dance with wolves." A dark gale rushed across the battlefield. With it, a destructive sonic boom slammed into the tank troops. The shockwave included the magical effect of the Storm of Destruction skill. Gradually, the storm grew into a tornado, a dragon storm of destruction whose well-calculated movements were honed for maximum enemy casualties. That was Dance with Wolves, Gobta's fearsome anti-army annihilator. And with that, one corner of the battlefield had effectively collapsed. Meanwhile, as Gobta began his rampage on the ground, changes were also occurring in the sky. This was the third corps led by Gabiru. Following Benimaru's order, Gabiru and his team had been providing cover for the Goblin Riders. Once that became too difficult, they moved on to the next mission without panicking. In other words, they were part of the same pretend-to-lose strategy Gobta was in on. The strategy was to make the enemy play their trump cards by maintaining a stalemate while making it look as if Tempest were about to lose. It was a pretty wild idea, but Benimaru had ordered it without looking concerned at all, and Gobta and Gabiru accepted it without a second thought. If things got truly dangerous for Gabiru, they had permission to evacuate, but only after they helped Gobta's force retreat. Gabiru did not think that would be necessary. After all, despite all his protests, Gobta had still been smirking at the idea of executing the operation. Gabiru thought he could learn a lot from Gobta's brashness, but as it turned out, the two of them were similar in many ways. Even in this state of affairs, Gabiru was still looking to shoot down an airship if he could. As long as he could maintain the stalemate without too much effort, he saw no problem with damaging the opponent. That was the idea behind the aerial approach, but the enemy turned out to be stronger than he thought. Their core's magic did not work, and the Wyvern Riders' fireball attacks were blocked as well. With their air dominance gone, Gabiru's team was at a distinct disadvantage. Gabiru's role was to attract the airship's attention. If he and Team Hiryu fought with all their might without minding the consequences, it was not impossible to bring the ships down. But doing that would make it impossible to continue the mission, so Gabiru decided this was the time for patience. Thus, he followed Benimaru's orders and gladly accepted the role of a sitting duck in the air. The problem was the Wyvern Riders and their lack of durability. They might have been elites from the blue numbers, but they had not evolved into dragon youths the way Gabiru and his corps had. Their magic resistance was low, and if they were caught in a large-scale magical attack, they would be brutally shot down. So Gabiru decided to ask the Wyvern Riders to withdraw. Gabiru called to Ultima.
Lady Ultima, I have a favor to ask.
Ultima answered, "What is it?"
I wish to have us continue our pretend-to-lose strategy, but I am thinking about upping the performance.
Ultima echoed, "Upping the performance?"
Yes. If we keep flitting around like this, I am not sure the enemy will ever let their guards down. Therefore, I would like to have Team Hiryu leave itself more open to magic attack.
Ultima considered that. A very interesting idea. So what do you really want?
Well, as I see it, now is the perfect opportunity to build our resistances a little. Not even a direct hit will kill us, likely. We have plenty of recovery potions, so I thought I could put on a nice show of being battered and bruised while we tested out our endurance against them.
Ultima laughed out loud at the wild idea. The rest of Team Hiryu looked less than enthusiastic. One Team Hiryu member cried, "Are you serious, General?" Another muttered, "Sir Gabiru can be rather simple sometimes, can't he?" A third complained, "Do we have to try that right now?" That's what I want to say. Kenneth Hiryu pretended not to hear the rising complaints. Ultima finally said, "Well, all right, I'll allow it. Sounds like fun besides."
My thanks to you. Now, if you could, I would like your group to take their leave.
He wanted Ultima, the observer, to lead the Wyvern Riders away to safety. Gabiru and Team Hiryu alone would then launch a de facto suicide strike on the airships. One soldier groaned, "If this kills me, I'm gonna haunt you in the afterlife." Another grumbled, "Wish you hadn't thought of this experiment." A third said, "This is definitely something he'll be pissed about later." Groans and scowls were everywhere across the force, but Gabiru still paid them no mind. Although they liked to gripe, their enthusiasm and excitement were bubbling up to the surface. So Team Hiryu decided to engage in some impromptu magical endurance training. All this happened, by the way, while Rimuru was looking on and fretting to himself. When he found out the truth later, he almost had a conniption on the spot, shouting to high heaven at Gabiru and his aides. More than a few Team Hiryu members predicted this well in advance, but the fact that they went with it anyway showed that Gabiru, their superior officer, was maybe becoming a bad influence on them. Anyway, that was much of the reason Gabiru and his force took so much damage from the magic the airship spat out. Now Gabiru heard Rimuru's order in his mind.
Listen to me! The training time is over! Now it is time to turn these skies into a graveyard!
He was oblivious to how worried Rimuru had been about this experiment. His troops were beyond excited, and Gabiru himself was brimming with joy.
Fortunately, the inexperienced among us have evacuated with Lady Ultima. It is only us here now, and it is no problem if we get a little reckless.
This goading did not get quite the reaction he intended. One member snapped, "Reckless? I'd rather fight like hell than go through that endurance training again." Another agreed, Yeah, and it's not the first time Sir Gabiru's been reckless with our lives." Gabiru's face turned red.
Silence! Just get on with it, all of you. Follow me and give me your full strength.
Seeing Gabiru embarrass himself like that made all the troops who saw it grin a little. One of them said, "Well, so be it. You guys stop fooling around too. Let's just step up and get on with what we're told." Another answered, Yeah, we're not about to say no to the general, no." A third called out, "No way, Sir Gabiru, give us your orders." Hearing that, Gabiru nodded, satisfied. Then he sized up the Flying Combat Corps fighting against them and shouted his question.
"Who are the champions of the skies?"
Team Hiryu answered as one. "It is us, Team Hiryu." The mood had changed with Gabiru, and his team answered up to it.
That's right, we have to get rid of those who pollute our sky. That is the will of Sir Rimuru. He has given his royal decree, and so you must do everything in your power. All of it. Don't think about anything else.
Team Hiryu roared, "Yay!" Gabiru's order held special meaning for Team Hiryu. It meant far more than simply trying harder.
Don't let your consciousness slip away from you, all right? All troops, enter Dragon Body.
The members of Team Hiryu sprang up at once. This was Dragon Body, their secret weapon and ultimate finisher. Not only did it increase their fighting power to an overwhelming degree, but it also increased their ferocity, making it more difficult to control themselves. If it consumed their sense of self, they would become rampaging monsters. They had stashed away that ability until now precisely because it became difficult to control all their destructive impulses. Gabiru had invited Midri to lecture them on control training, but their success rate had not been too stellar so far. Still, use it they must. Rimuru had ordered them to give it their all, so they had no reason to hesitate.
Dragon Mode!
All at once, Team Hiryu unleashed their true force. Their muscles swelled, and the purple scales covering them turned jet black. The scales became thicker, more flexible, and several times tougher. Their heights also increased by around 20% as they took in the surrounding magicules to construct new bodies for themselves. With that mega boost in mass and volume, their offensive and defensive forces leaped forward. They were incomparable to how they had been before the transformation. And as for the most important part, their consciousnesses, if they lost that, they would become nothing more than pure manifestations of power. But no one on Team Hiryu lost it. Every single one did a magnificent job keeping hold of themselves. This was the moment when the true force of the Dragon Warriors, the most powerful fighting corps in Tempest, came into effect.
I want each of you to take down one airship. Can you do it?
Team Hiryu answered, "Yes, sir."
Great! Then get to it!
At Gabiru's command, Team Hiryu moved in unison. Who were the champions of the skies? The answer was about to be resolved before their eyes. The members of the Flying Combat Corps, the most valued part of the Armored Division, itself one of the Empire's 3 great fighting forces, were no more than pathetic, bleeding lambs now. The reason was simple. Now that the Dragon Mutes had unleashed Dragon Body, the special properties of that intrinsic skill had nullified the Empire's magic. Gabiru and the other Dragon Warriors were immune to everything up to and including Megiddo, which itself was nature-based magic. Each one had a multi-layer barrier and cancel natural elements on them, shrugging off physical attacks and canceling both magical attacks and natural effects. The airships attacked mainly with magic, with machine guns as auxiliary arms, and they had no chance of penetrating the scales of Gabiru's force. Team Hiryu's fighting skill ranked A- to start with, and multiplying that several times over had pushed them well past the A wall. Even worse for the Empire, the transformation gave them healing skills scarily close to ultra-speed regeneration. They had tapped into enough power to make each one a high-level magic-born. With that, the fate of the now toothless airships was sealed. Now Gabiru was making it official.
It's time to go! Prepare for my special finisher.
Gabiru was stronger than his peers to start with. In addition to muscle, he also had a special A level of magicules in his body. It did not hold a candle to Shion's or Benimaru's. Tapping into Dragon Body for himself had made him into a truly remarkable warrior, enough power to even approach the former Demon Lords Kirillon and Frey.
Vortex crash!
A single strike from Gabiru sent an airship hurtling toward the ground. The air current swirled around him, concentrating the moisture in the atmosphere to a single point and melding it into a maelstrom of magical power. The full brunt of that vortex was released from Gabiru's spear, piercing straight through one of the airships. Its barrier, kept running by 100-strong staff in the ship's defense section, provided zero resistance before shattering. The airship was instantly downed. The rest of the Dragon Warriors quickly followed suit. Although they could not fire pure magic power from their spears like Gabiru, each used enhanced physical abilities to charge at a respective airship. Magic no longer worked on them, and the ship's barriers provided no protection. In no time, those barriers were breached, allowing the Dragon Warriors to invade the ships. 5 Dragon Warriors swarmed a ship at a time, taking no more than a few minutes to bring one down. At this point, it was only a matter of time before the entire Flying Combat Corps was wiped out. Gabiru was already getting carried away.
Keep it up, warriors, keep it up! And if any of you can't take down a single ship, you know what'll happen to you later, I'm sure!
Hearing those words, the Team Hiryu members lagging behind the pack exchanged alarmed glances. There were only 100 airships they had counted, and if Gabiru refused to stop attacking, there would be precious few left for them. One of them protested, "Ah, come on, Sir Gabiru." Another said, "Sir Gabiru's so moody, isn't he? And he's in such a good mood right now, I dunno if he's gonna leave any prey for us." A third muttered, "Knowing the general, that's way too possible. How would Gabiru judge airships taken down by teams? That was for him to decide." The rest of the force, fully aware of this, rushed to join the attack. Now the positions of predator and prey were reversed, and so the course of the day in the sky was settled. Going back in time a little, the supply troops assigned to the Imperial Army's Magi-Tank force were about to face the trial of their lives. Hakuro, the man in charge of the green numbers, addressed his troop.
You've done well to keep up with me. But remember, the real battle is about to begin.
His face was cool and unaffected, but the force of 12,000 hanging on his words were gasping for breath. They were located directly behind the Empire's tank force, and to get there they had marched in a long arc of some 25 miles from the Dwarven Kingdom, all while wearing heavy equipment. It was Hakuro the instructor who made this possible. He had trained all his numbers thoroughly, drilling them in the art of battle will. Thanks to that, the numbers had mastered a variety of martial arts, including instant move, which let them virtually teleport at will, and form hide, which prevented their foes from sensing them. The green numbers had deployed at the same time as Gobta's force, doing their best to reach this spot without being detected by the enemy. Hakuro continued,
I would like to commend all of you on your mastery of the battle will I taught you.
His face was as gentle as a doting mother. His troops, seated on the ground as they listened to him, gasped anew. They had known Hakuro for a long time, and they knew that if the instructor was merciless against his allies, he was even more so against the enemy. The order he would give them after this compliment was terrifying to imagine. Those who understood that it was theirs to execute accepted the foreboding news with steely resolve.
Our mission is to cut off the enemy's supply lines here. It may not mean much in the grand scheme of things, but if we can destroy the enemy's rear supply units, we can dissuade them from wanting to fight a little. There is no need to take enemy lives needlessly, but there is also no need to show mercy either. Besides,
Hakuro glanced across the battlefield and smiled.
Gobta has grown to be a fine man. He is currently doing an expert job playing the decoy for us. And I want you all to perform as well as that general is.
Hakuro's voice boomed over the distant explosions. Those with no real combat experience grew more tense by the moment, overwhelmed by the sound of it all.
All right. While you're fighting, I don't want you to think about anything else. Fail to kill the enemy and you're the one who dies. Let the enemy go and friends will die because of it. Those are the ironclad rules of the battlefield.
His troops had been panting for breath a moment ago, but now they were silent, listening to every word. Their leader was imparting knowledge so those prepared to give their everything would not find themselves mentally lost in battle.
All life does not come equally. There is no need to worry about strangers when compared to the lives of your loved ones. I will also remind you that these enemies are invaders. They are fools who don't even deserve the right to live. Do not be shy about cutting them down.
With those threatening words, Hakuro hoped to quell any feelings of guilt they might have. It was his way of showing a little kindness.
I have trained all of you, and with that training you can even cut down those piles of iron. Everything thrown out from them seems frozen in the air to you, does it not? Then do not be afraid. There is no one who can stand against our blades.
Nobody could say, no, they don't seem frozen at all, sir. There was no way to say it. If they did, Hakuro would answer, you need more training, and give them an even more harrowing ordeal than any war could. Still, while some had little complaints like that in their minds, none of them complained about Hakuro himself. He never asked them to do something he would not do. His words could be extreme, but it was all based on his desire as their leader to see his troops reach the same heights he had. Now the green numbers were watching for their chance, the order from Hakuro to charge. Their boss was acting as a decoy, the most dangerous job of the day, and he was giving a truly excellent performance befitting a member of the Big Four. They had all seen him through Hakuro's all-seeing eye extra skill, and thanks to thought communication, everyone down to the last member shared the same insight. There was fear, yes, but more than that, the green numbers were fascinated by Gobta and his goblin rider's courage. It made them realize that now it was their turn to make an effort. Hakuro felt his anxiety dissipate a little as he sized up his group. Its members had been thoroughly trained to deal with all kinds of situations, but this was still their first battle, and casualties were possible. Somewhere in his heart, he wished he could have done additional training, but there was nothing more he could do. The enemy would not wait for them. Under Benimaru's plan, Gobta's force would maintain the stalemate for as long as possible. It would make the enemy impatient, Benimaru had said. The tanks did not have infinite shells, so the rain of bullets had to stop at some point. That was when Hakuro's force would come into play. They would hit the enemy's supply forces, seize their goods, and make it simple to seize the tanks themselves. As a secondary objective, they were tasked with uncovering the hidden leaders, the strongmen among the enemy, but that could be played by ear. Hakuro hoped that if such enemies existed, they would come to him. That too was only a matter of luck. This was his troops' first battle. If they were consumed by fear, they were bound to die. He wanted to ease those fears as much as possible, but they would simply have to see. For now, all Hakuro could do was pray they succeeded, and that everyone came out of it safe. But those fears turned out to be unnecessary. Rimuru's order suddenly reached the green numbers through Hakuro's skill, commanding them to listen and eliminate the enemy as quickly as possible. Hearing it was all it took for the monster's anxieties to be quelled. An inexplicable elation rose among them. Their bodies felt warm, as if they would catch on fire. Now Rimuru's words, his orders, were going into effect. They made Hakuro chuckle.
I see I've worried for nothing. Did you hear that, all of you?
The green numbers answered, "Yes, sir."
Then let's go. Your patient waiting is over. Go and unleash your full powers.
Before Hakuro could finish his words, the monster army rushed off at a furious pace. 10 or so minutes later, the infantry guarding the Empire's supply teams were lined up in a horizontal formation, ready to intercept the monster army. The sudden surprise attack almost threw them into disorder, but they were the Empire's elites and they immediately regained their bearings. Some platoons used armored vehicles for transport as shields while they shot at the monsters. At first glance, the Imperial forces seemed to have the upper hand as befitting an army with such a decisive numerical advantage, but the green numbers were not intimidated. Despite being exposed to gunfire, the scale shields provided to the front row proved handy. Unlike a bow, a rifle shot does not travel in an arc. Small arms fire is meant to suppress an enemy at close range, and as long as the front row did not take hits, worthwhile suppression would never happen. This was still a world of swords and sorcery. With their unthinkably high lethality, guns had the power to change every tactical textbook in the land. But this world had magic, so a single bullet was not necessarily enough to neutralize an enemy. For that, slashing attacks with swords and axes were more effective than bullets striking a single tiny point of the body. The Empire had great pride in all its new weapons, but not even they were enough to cause a paradigm shift. If the rifles would not do it, the commander decided, it was time to break out a new weapon. The commander shouted, "Damn it! All forces switch from rifle fire to your spell guns. Maintenance teams, join the main force and bring only the most important supplies with you." The standard rifle, a weapon recreated from knowledge brought from another world, was ineffective against monsters. The Empire had seen some success in experimental stages, but only against unarmed, essentially naked creatures. If rifles failed, there was always magic. These spell guns, wieldable even by ordinary foot soldiers, had fire lance magic engraved on them. The commander believed that would be enough to pierce most monsters and burn them alive. Unfortunately, that supposition was beyond naive. The green numbers were equipped with the latest unique class armor. Garm had hammered out the scales of Charybdis to create their scale shields, and those shields could deflect far more than lead bullets. One Imperial soldier cried, "No good, sir. The enemy force is immune to magic." The true value of the scale shields was their high resistance to magic, but that was not the only nightmare striking the Imperial army. From the skies above came the Wyvern Riders, the elites of the blue numbers led by Ultima. Ultima gave a sweetly voiced order. Drop 'em all! The ground was engulfed in flames. It was a flare bomb-based ranged attack. Not a terribly powerful one, but it had ample killing force against the Imperial infantry. The sound in particular sowed confusion across the battlefield. It made the support soldiers, the mechanics, medics, and others not used to fighting, unable to keep up with the changing situation. Soon the order to join the main force was no longer being heeded, leading to even more unnecessary casualties. It was a relief for Hakuro to see that the battle was turning out to be more lopsided than he feared. Ultima landed from her wyvern's back and called out, "Hey there, Hakuro! These kids are under my command, but do you mind if I leave them to you?"
Miss Ultima, I don't mind that, no, but...
Hakuro gave Ultima a good-natured greeting as he watched her jump down. The difference between his attitude with her and with his soldiers was like a yawning chasm. Ultima said, "You don't? Great, thanks so much." Ultima was acting like a cute little girl begging her grandfather for a treat. If Feyron or Zonda saw her like this, they would no doubt wonder if they were hallucinating. They would never tell her that, of course.
Certainly, certainly. By the way...
Ultima asked, What is it?
Well, you see, Miss Ultima, I had a question for you. Are you close to Lady Carrera, perhaps?
Ultima replied, I dunno about calling her lady and me miss, but I'll let you off the hook, Hakuro. Anyway, the answer's simple. We hate each other. Ultima was still all smiles and cuteness, but there was something frightening about her presence in that moment. As it turned out, she was extremely good at this feigned friendliness. She was actually brutal and ruthless by nature, and those two sides of her fluctuated so much that nobody would be blamed for thinking she had a split personality. Even so, Ultima always paid due respect to those older than her, so that aspect of her went wholly unnoticed with most people.
Oh, no? A pity.
Ultima asked, Why'd you ask?
Well, I was just, wondering if you knew Agera, one of Lady Carrera's men.
Hakuro picked his words carefully. The demon Agera looked a lot like a certain person Hakuro knew. In fact, they were virtually body doubles. That person was none other than Byakuya Araki, Hakuro's grandfather and martial arts teacher. Hakuro was thus keenly interested in Agera, but the demon himself did not even seem to notice Hakuro. Was it because old age changed Hakuro's appearance too much? Ultima said plainly, sorry, I dunno, I'm not too interested in him. But if you're that curious, why don't you ask him yourself? She made it sound so casual. Hakuro nodded his agreement.
You're right. I suppose I was overthinking it.
Ultima said, yeah, that's an easy habit to fall into. But you better think about that later, huh? The battle's more important right now. You don't want Sir Rimuru yelling at you, do ya? With a final word or two of thanks, Ultima flew off into the sky once more. Hakuro watched her go with a bit of a confused look on his face.
Look at me. I keep telling people not to let distractions seize your mind in battle, but it seems I need to work on that myself. Best make up for this error as quickly as I can.
Then he drew his blade, ready to rule the battlefield as the Sword Ogre.
Route confirmed. The next episode and full playlist are ready.
Then don't stop here. Keep watching in story order and subscribe before the next part drops.